And it really is about, are we open to exploring and being open to, having this conversation rather than getting righteous about it and thinking, well, no,
right.
My way is better than your way.
Nice inner critic interjection there, yeah. You really touched upon something I think is important, and we haven't discussed, which is, at least not much, which aspect of ourselves are we identifying with? Are we identifying with our mind, our body, our spirit, our emotions? And where I'm going with this is, on the spiritual path, the path of living consciously, the path of living as the true authority of our lives. To do that, we can no longer solely identify with the mind. We have to identify with an energy, a power, a source that is more than just our mind. Maybe that's our mind, body, spirit, as we consider it all together. I don't want to get into an ideological discussion because there's so many religions and so much beauty in world religions that people find their strength in that I don't want to get into, a mind's better than yours discussion. But we all have the sense of where we identify with. And your approach, what I think is brilliant, is that there is by being in the present moment, you're teaching people and letting them experience how to identify with their true nature. And the more that we identify with our true nature, the more we experience joy, peace, abundance, all the things we want. And so to come back to Monica's question, it's really not absolutely necessary to do historical work in order to live in the present moment. If we actually continue to have more experiences of our true nature, Eckhart Tolle talks about this, as you are more present, you'll have more experiences of present, and they will last longer and longer and longer. And what that really means is you identify with your presence, your true nature, more frequently and more often than you're identifying with your mind, than with your history. So yeah, all the approaches will work, and my approach with Liberate Your Life and the work I do is a different way of doing that, because we look at the holes and the barriers we have that have prevented us from knowing our true nature, prevented us from identifying with our true nature. And then we do exercises to step into experiencing that, to find out what it is like when I am strong, courageous, when I have the willpower to do things. So there really is that, and that shifts the identity into the true nature identity and less away from the mind. So in my case, I use the historical as a way to distance ourselves from that which is inauthentic and gain ourselves closer to that which is authentic. And in your case, you use the present moment to distance from the inauthentic and to shift into the authentic.
So, are there any quick fixes?
No. Absolutely not.
Yes, good.
But there's a lot of wonderful tools that can accelerate. Your own program, Accelerated Awakening. We have choices. I myself use subliminal programming, audio technologies, brainwave entrainment, affirmations, my own approach, other people's approaches. Part of what I love about the work I do is I really look for the truth, and I look for the nuggets of gold in different approaches and integrate it into my own self and my work, and then share that with others. So no, there's no short, quick fixes, but there are ways to accelerate your awakening.
Yeah, wonderful. Excellent. Okay, we got one other question here, and this is a wonderful question from a woman called Shari. And Shari says, I'm a mother of 2 daughters, 9 and 11. If their inner critic is developed at age 4 to 7, is it possible, as I become more awake and conscious, to begin to rewire them now? Can you recommend a practice to model with my children?
Yes. Having a 4.5-year-old son, I can really relate, because I've been blessed that each key step of my development has been lockstep with his actual development. So as I'm working through things like my joy, that's right around the age when he was coming into his joy, when his will was really strong, as it is right now. That's an area where I've been challenging and working with my will with, like the hunched shoulders, like I mentioned. So it's been a real blessing that my work has informed my parenting. And one thing I'd like to share is, a lot of times it's about dreams, what we feel we can what we're allowed to want. And so the inner critic really has a heavy hand when it comes to what we will allow ourselves to have. How much love can we allow into our lives? Our inner critic will really smash us and tell us why we don't deserve X, Y, and Z. And even the most well-intentioned parents often will not realize they are feeding their child's inner critic rather than helping their child transcend it. And the reason for that is because the default that many parents have when they can't give a child something is to say no. The default is to say, we can't do that, we don't have enough time, money, space, whatever it is. And what we don't realize is most of the time children, they usually hear the first thing out of our sentence and miss the rest of it. So we say something like, we can't do that right now because we don't have enough time, because we have to get to X, Y, Z, otherwise you'll miss all of this other stuff. Now, what did the child hear? No. That's what they heard. And they heard a really long explanation on no. What children really need to hear is that they've been seen, honored, and acknowledged. So with my son, the first thing I say when he says he wants something, and I know I can't get it for him, for whatever reason, or it's not appropriate to give to him, I will say, I hear that you want this. And I can see the acknowledgement in his eyes immediately. I can see he understands I acknowledged that he wanted something. And then I can say why we can't have it, or I can share and explain. The other thing is to realize that a lot of times we can actually give our children what they want. It may not just look like what they want. You know, we've heard, I'll shift to adulthood for a moment. We've heard stories about millionaires. They made tons of money, and they were unhappy. And they realized they were chasing happiness, but they were chasing it the wrong way. Children do the same thing. It didn't start, only in adulthood. It starts in childhood. They chase the wrong things. Often what they want is to be seen, or maybe in a sense of adventure, or to be acknowledged. Or maybe the child just needs to be able to feel like he or she has some power in the world. So sometimes, my son will set up a barrier. Quite literally, he'll put, chairs up, and he'll say, okay, no boys can come over this side, or no daddies can come on this side of the barrier. And, a parent can get very quickly and easily frustrated and be like, well, I want to go eat some food. You're in the kitchen. I'm hungry. It's a reasonable response for the parent to get frustrated. Now, if we're thinking about the whole picture, what is really going on? Well, my son is looking for some authority in his life. He's 4.5. He doesn't get to make a lot of decisions. So right now, he's trying to take a stand and say, I want to have a say in my world. I want to have some influence to know that I can make things happen. This ties into willpower, actually. I can make things happen. Parents often squash the will and say, no, I want to eat. I'm going to step over it because I'm big and I can do that. What does the child subconsciously receive as a message? If I'm bigger, I can step over and get what I want. So when we step back and have a dialogue, oh, well, that's interesting. Okay, well, thank you. Well, what would it take for me to come through this barrier? Is there another option? Start talking with the child in this context. I've talked with my son. After 5 or 10 minutes, we discovered, okay, there's a secret door that he can allow me to come into. There was also a second door in the house, and I was allowed to have him hand me my shoes so I could walk to the back door, exit the house, come through the front door into the kitchen and get my food. And that was allowed. And what happened in this situation, although it seems long-winded, it takes longer to do things, my son realized he has power in the world. He has influence, and that when his requests are reasonable, I will honor them. Another thing, great example for kids is, dessert. I love this example. Parents will say, no, you can't have chocolate right now, you need to eat dinner. Then you can have chocolate. What did the child hear? My wants don't matter. Chocolate doesn't matter. I have to do what you say, and because you're bigger, I have to do it. So one thing I've done with my son, which has helped a lot, is I'll say, oh, I hear you want chocolate. And how about we go get you a small little piece now? You'll have some real food, some healthy food that gives you energy. And then if you want more, chocolate or dessert after that, we can do that. And that usually, not always, because he has a strong will, but that often will quench, his thirst, because he wanted to be acknowledged. He wanted to enjoy that pleasure. And I found a way to balance his needs and mine. My need or desire to have him develop fully, to be healthy, and to understand delayed gratification, but also to know that his wants matter, and that he can have influence, that he can enjoy life, that he doesn't have to slog through the healthy food, which I try and make taste good, but doesn't always. But he doesn't have to slog through that to get what he wants sometimes, because it's a reasonable request. So oftentimes I think, for parents, especially around 11 and 9 and 7, where there's a really strong inner critic that's developed, look for ways that we can really honor our children. Look for ways that we can give them as much of what they want as we can, as frequently as we can, and be willing to set healthy boundaries when it's not appropriate or not possible to give them what they want.
Amazing. Fantastic. It reminds me of a book that I believe Neil Donald Walsh recommended. He said, I think it was called Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk. I can't remember who wrote it, but it's quite an old book. All cartoons, but a beautiful conscious parenting model. Thank you, Chris. That's awesome. Now, I'd like to invite you to just share a little bit about this Liberate Your Life course. I know, Chris, you've created this incredible 24-week program. It's incredible value, not high cost at all, and it just sounds amazing. So mad, like I'm almost scratching my head going, how is that even possible? But I'd like to give you a chance, because you've shared a lot of interesting information in this call. A lot of people are going to want to put it into practice. A lot of people are wanting now to take that step to, like you shared, like wanting to complete, to turn that knowing of what they should or could or not ought to. I don't want to bring the conditioning into it, but as I said, everybody knows what it takes to move their life forward, but they're not always taking those steps for whatever reasons. And you've shared about these powerful associations, these stories that have existed at a deep unconscious level that kind of create our reality. So, and I know this Liberate Your Life is a way of unlocking that. So would you share a little bit about that? Because I'm sure there's going to be many people here fascinated to know more about it, as I am.
Yeah, like you mentioned, it's a 24-week course, and the way it's structured is every week you receive a teaching that helps you look at some of the developmental challenges you've had towards developing certain qualities. And Liberate Your Life focuses specifically on the qualities of strength, courage, and willpower. Or to translate into general terms, it's what it takes to start things and get things done. And it takes, 24 weeks is actually the opening, the doorway to looking at all of the barriers we've had in different qualities. Like we talked about weakness being one barrier that we often either identify with or overcompensate with. The same applies to various qualities of willpower, of courage. The inner critic, I'd say about 60% of the program is focused on helping really look at how much the inner critic affects your life, all the different roles in your life that you're playing when it affects you, and then also developing very clear, effective strategies to putting that inner critic at bay so that we don't have to take it so seriously. Because just like people tend to identify with weakness or overcompensating, same thing is true with our inner critic. We can so identify with the judgments we tell ourselves and others that we just stay locked in a prison, unable to take action. So that's why I've devoted so much of the program to illuminating the inner critic and to showing all the different ways it's in your life. And then providing you tools, every exercise, every week you get a teaching, a lesson, plus an exercise that will actually help you go straight into your